If you're a sales manager, a hiring manager, whatever that looks like in your organization, recruitment can be brutal.
If you get it wrong, that can also be a super painful process as well. If you do land up with the wrong salesperson, I really don't know of any other program that does it as effectively and objectively as what we're able to help clients to do. Thanks everybody for jumping on and watching this session that we're going to be recording today, talking very much about using sales assessments and also our recruitment process. One of the things I'm most excited about is you've still got very fresh experience from the customer side. Like Andrea, I also joined after working as a SalesStar customer at one stage, and absolutely love the opportunity to work with so many clients and helping their sales teams develop and grow. So awesome experience. Topic for our discussion today is obviously to share our experiences from both the customer side and also as we're working with clients. And first part of this is really to start to look at these sales assessments that I mentioned earlier on. So I'm really keen, before we actually start to talk about the sales assessments, really keen to get your perspective on some of the common challenges that you've seen in relation to recruitment of salespeople in particular.
Oh my goodness, how much time?
Where do you start?
Yeah, exactly. And look, I think that anybody that's been through recruiting, and whether it's, as a professional recruiter, whether it's as an HR manager, whether it's just as somebody within the team that has that responsibility, there's so much to it. I think some of the biggest things that I've found challenging personally, quality and quantity of candidates. You really want a large pool of great people to select from. So sometimes that's your first hurdle, is getting there. And, even if you've got that, then it's okay, well, how do I now narrow this huge pool of people down to who's going to be the right ones, which is obviously where OMG does such a great job. And then it's just the time that the process takes. You can invest so much time in recruitment, and I think especially if you care about doing it well. And for me, that's always been really important. I firmly believe that how you recruit really says a lot about how you run your business. And then, of course, I think the other big one that I'm sure everybody could relate to is just ensuring that the people that you are bringing on board are the right fit for your business, of course, but also for your customers and for your team.
How often haven't we seen a new sales team member join and they might be a great salesperson, but they're actually quite disruptive to the team as well. Mm-hmm. So we can't ignore factors like the team fit and the customer fit.
Oh, definitely. And I think that you can take a really great salesperson, put them into the wrong role, and they can be terrible.
Mm.
And I think that that's a really common hiring mistake. If you don't have the depth of insight and you're just going off a CV, hopefully some reference checks, and gut feel, there's a lot of possibility in there to just not quite get that right.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you. Andrea, I'm not sure what you've seen out there in the market, but do you think a lot of sales leaders are actually clear in articulating even the sales role itself, in terms of being able to articulate clearly what specifically they're looking for in the actual sales role? Forget about the cultural fit and the fit with the customers. Do you think they have that level of clarity?
Oh, I think a lot of the time, no. I mean, I'm sure there's some people that, do a fantastic job of that, but I think a lot of the time what you see is people aren't really sure. A lot of the time it's based off of what's been done in the past. You get that mentality of, oh, well, this has worked for us before, so surely it'll work again. A lot of the time people aren't really clear on, exactly who their target market is anymore. If that's not something that they're really familiar with, markets have changed, people have changed, how and why and where people buy has changed. And if a company's not really on top of that all the time, it's very easy to lose sight of what your organization actually needs and what your customers need and what your team needs. It's also very easy to look at, oh, this is the type of salespeople that we've got. therefore we should hire more of these. But often the best teams I've found in my experience are well-rounded. You've got different personalities, you've got different, I suppose, natural selling styles. You've got people with different strengths and weaknesses, that can support each other, balance each other out. Generally, no two customers are the same. So if all of your salespeople are the same, you're probably missing out on part of your market. So no, definitely, I think a lot of people don't really have that clarity around exactly who do we need for this role and what is this role.
Yeah, no, it's interesting to hear you speak about the recruitment process, because that can be a painful process, but then post recruitment, if you get it wrong, that can also be a super painful process as well if you do land up with the wrong salesperson.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I mean, what is the cost of that, right? Exactly. Not just the actual dollars either that you invest in recruitment and in onboarding new staff, but even just the mental or the emotional cost of going through that process, thinking that you've found that person and then finding yourself right back at the beginning again with a team that's probably frustrated because they've invested, time and effort into, being part of that onboarding. So yeah, there's so many costs involved with bad hires. And again, I think that's something that OMG does really well, is it's giving you a really unbiased perspective on a candidate. I think we all go into recruitment with our own perspective, right? Which comes from our own experiences and, our own learnings and the industries that we've come from. And so you generally go into it with some sort of bias. So I think that OMG is really great at stripping all of that out and just going, here are the facts. This is what we know.
So just keeping it at a factual level rather than being very subjective, which is the most common process.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Andrea, question for you. So for our viewers watching again, I know you've used the OMG assessments, sales assessments that we've spoken about, but for those watching that have never heard of OMG before, I certainly never had before I started working with SalesStar. Could you share with the viewers what is OMG and what do they do?
Yeah, of course. So OMG, Objective Management Group, it's a science-based sales assessment tool. And what's really unique about it is it's sales specific, it's role specific, it's highly predictive, and it also provides some really great insights into your team effectiveness. But I think from the client perspective, what I liken it to is it's a roadmap. It's providing you with direction, what to look for, where to dig deeper, understanding the right questions to ask. I think your experience is probably the same as mine, André. Most salespeople do their best selling in an interview, right? They're selling themselves, the product that they're most familiar with. So I think that what OMG does that's really unique is it helps you get beyond that surface, the pitch that you're being given, and helps you really dig into who somebody is and how to ask the right questions to uncover the things that you need to know to make smart hiring decisions.
For anybody watching that maybe is familiar with, personality profile assessments like DISC or Myers-Briggs or those sort of things, which are not quantitative, they're more qualitative in nature. How would you compare OMG against those type of assessments?
Yeah, I think, and I've done a lot of that sort of assessment myself. Some of them are definitely interesting, but what I think really sets OMG apart is it's just the level of insight, and it's also the direction that it gives you, even insofar as to tell you things like what sort of longevity do we think this person's going to have within the company? How confident are we in the answers that they've given? Here's the things that we're concerned about. These are the questions that we think you need to ask. And these are the sorts of answers that you should be looking out for. I haven't come across any other assessment tool that's giving you that depth of, insight. I think another thing that's really important about it as well is because it's giving you so much insight, it's such a time saver. That's one of the things that, so many people struggle with if you're a sales manager, a hiring manager, whatever that looks like in your organization, there's generally never enough time. And recruitment can be brutal. If you get hundreds of applicants for a position, I mean, it's great. You want a big pool to choose from, but then how do you choose well? Do you review 200 CVs, cover letters, knowing that in this day and age, the majority of them probably weren't put together by the person applying for the job, knowing that at that early stage, you don't have any sort of verification around the accuracy of any of it. So I think one of the really big things that I got out of OMG personally was just it gave me the ability to shortlist in a fraction of the time. I let it do the hard work for me. Tell me assessment. Who do I target first? Where are my top performers? You get people that don't do the assessment at all. Great. They've told you themselves with their unwillingness to do it that they're probably not the right fit. They probably don't have the mindset that you're looking for.
Question that I have for you is from being on the customer side, have you come across any reluctance for people to either do the OMG evaluations or actually to believe in the information or the results that come out of it from your perspective?
Oh, definitely. My goodness, the stories I could tell. I've had instances. Obviously, you get your group of people that don't do the assessment at all. And like I mentioned earlier, for me, that's people weeding themselves out of the process, putting their hand up, by not doing anything and saying, hey, actually, you know what? I'm probably not the right fit because I'm already telling you I'm not willing to do what it takes. Then you get the people that, come back to you and say, why are you asking me to do this? This is so involved. This is not what I'm used to. The people that actually get a little bit frustrated or upset about it, those are probably the most interesting people. And I think a lot of the time for people that sit in that space, it's just a little bit of fear, and it's also you're quite vulnerable. You're doing this assessment, you're putting yourself out there, you're answering these questions. That somebody on the other end in a company that you might really want to work for is going to see all of your mindset, your skill, laid bare. So I think for some people, it's a bit of a vulnerable place to put themselves. And then, of course, you also get people that question, why use an assessment tool like that in the first place. I've worked with other businesses in the recruitment space that go, oh, we don't want to spend any more on recruitment than what we already are. So you get that pushback. You get the, oh goodness, how is it different to any other assessment that's available? What if candidates don't do the assessment? And things like the cost. And we touched on this earlier already, Andre. It's that, the cost of a bad hire is so much more significant than putting the cost into getting your process right from the outset.
Absolutely.
So I think that the importance of that can't be underestimated. If I was going to give advice to people around the assessment, or if people were pushing back and saying why, in my experience, I've recruited salespeople for years previously without OMG, and I've recruited people for sales roles for years with OMG. I would never go back to doing it without the just knowing you've got that unbiased view, you've got that huge time saving, and you've also got a foundation to build on for the people that you do hire. You've already got this really brilliant insight into when you're onboarding that person and getting them into the team. It's given you that roadmap for where do we start? How do we help and support this person and get them up and running?
Yeah, fantastic advice.
So, Andre, tell me, what is Star Recruiter?
Yeah, so for those clients that are not aware, one of the key things that SalesStar does, and I think taking us back to how the name SalesStar actually came up, the star part of SalesStar actually stands for sales, training, and recruitment. So the R actually relates to recruitment because it's actually one of the foundational products that SalesStar started with. And that's evolved from actually doing the recruitment for clients to actually now Star Recruiter being where we actually help clients to learn and implement best practices so that they can actually recruit effectively themselves. Any leader in any role, a key skill that they need is to be able to recruit. And so it's actually about teaching them how to recruit effectively, and actually put that process in place so that they can continue to do that and get those great outcomes as you've just mentioned now. So we actually take the client through the process of actually understanding what are the key steps in the recruitment process. We help them to put in place the right tools to actually help facilitate that process, and then really hone and develop the key skills required to be effective in it. So like with anything, some steps are pretty straightforward and others require developing skills. Like, for example, interviewing. I remember when I first started interviewing, I used to go to Google and download a list of questions and just run through them because that's what Google gave me, right? Didn't really understand the importance of how to develop my own questions. So developing those key skills in certain areas that are going to help the manager to be effective, and also things like, for example, profiling the role. As you discussed before, understanding how do we profile the role. Going back to my early days in corporate, I'd try to create a job description. And again, you'd go to Google it, you'd find something and try to copy and paste, but really helping the client to actually think, what's the purpose of the role? Why does this role actually exist? And how should it add value to the business? And starting at that helicopter view and then narrowing it down so that we have something much more meaningful and understanding what the role should be focused on. And then another one that I think is super important, you mentioned before, is we want to get quality candidates. We want to get as many quality candidates as possible. So knowing how to be effective in writing your job ad is one aspect of that, but also understanding how to access the passive job market, which a lot of people are not really that aware of. And understanding that and knowing how to assess them or access them would hopefully increase the quantity of really high quality candidates that help us to then select, hopefully make difficult decisions where you've got 2 or 3 people to choose from, rather than just choosing the best out of a bad bunch, which is what often happens.
What would you say in terms of if you're working with a client and talking to them about Star Recruiter? What are the most common objections that you would get, and how would you speak to those?
Yeah, so probably the most common objection that I have is where if it's a smallish business and the sales leader doesn't actually have the time to devote to recruiting, and it does happen. Some smaller businesses, it's all hands on deck and they don't have a lot of time. And that might be a real challenge. Maybe in certain circumstances, the full Star Recruiter program might not be ideal for them because you need to devote enough time to be able to actually learn from the process as well.
Yeah. Do you ever get the, why can't you just do it for me?
No, I haven't had that, and yeah, so certainly haven't had that yet. But I'm sure some customers would love for us to be able to do that. And I think the key thing there is, as we've mentioned before, is as much as I don't mean in any way to rubbish the recruitment industry at the moment, but I think it is quite often counterproductive, and it's so super important in any role, but in particular in sales roles, to actually get the right top graded salespeople that have got the sales capability and the other fit factors. And I really don't know of any other program that does it as effectively and objectively as what we're able to help clients to do.
Yeah, and I also think there's so much value in teaching the people, within the organization, giving them, the skills in terms of recruiting well, understanding how to ask great questions in an interview, having a really robust recruitment process, having fantastic onboarding, all of those things. There's so much value in giving that to an organization, because at the end of the day, they understand their people and their product and their market better than we could, or better than any recruiter could. So you give them those tools, you give them that process and everything that wraps around it, and you put that together with, the company knowledge, the product knowledge, and surely that's your best outcome, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You just got me thinking now. Another key one that you've probably heard yourself, and I hear a lot, is initially sales leaders come to us and the first thing they look at as an attribute that they want to have within a new salesperson is industry experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm certainly not suggesting that industry experience isn't valuable, but it tends to be the most valued thing that a lot of sales leaders start off with when they start to look for somebody. And as you know as well as I do, sometimes that can actually work against the salesperson if they've come from that industry, especially if they've worked for a couple of competitors as well. It might not be the best thing, but a lot of sales leaders don't really value the actual sales competencies and skills rather than just the industry experience and actually focus on hiring for that as being the key attributes. So I think that's another important thing that Star Recruiter helps the sales leader to understand, is to really focus on those skills and capabilities rather than just focusing on the industry experience.
Yeah, no, you're right. That's a great point. I mean, look, that's certainly been my experience in some instances. Sometimes there's a lot of unlearning and relearning that has to happen. Um,
Yeah.
so, I completely agree. So Andre, what would you say are some of the key learnings like that you could share with us, from implementing Star Recruiter with so many of our clients?
Yeah, great question, Andrea. The one that you've just actually triggered in my mind is one of the add-on options that we have with Star Recruiter is for the SalesStar coach to do the final interviews in a role play format for the client. So it's essentially like where the client can actually watch the interview in a role play and see if they can actually imagine the salesperson in front of their customers and see if that's going to fit. And the interesting thing that I find with a lot of the salespeople that I've interviewed in this process is just how my clients' competitors are selling. What I mean by that is the salespeople are knocking on doors and asking to quote. And I just find that that's such an amazing strategic opportunity for our clients to actually differentiate themselves by actually getting strong salespeople that know how to sell, and especially consultatively sell, and being able to use that to really differentiate. So focusing on those scale skills and competencies that are automatically going to start to give them a competitive advantage. So that's been one of the key takeaways that I've been able to see how the competitors are selling. Another really key one, which I loved, was one of my clients, after going through the whole program, actually took our process and just simply replaced the OMG assessment with another assessment tool for hiring in their operations part of their business, and got great success from it. So, I think that was a great thing to actually see how this is a repeatable process and how they actually learned effectively from it and actually are now using that in other parts of their business.
Yeah.
Another one that I've had in a couple of cases is where we've top graded the salespeople. In other words, we've helped the client to actually select really strong sales candidates. Those salespeople have actually really stood out in the business, and the clients have actually commented to me how they can now see how valuable the process is because, this new salesperson has stepped straight in and they're already hitting goals from an early stage and really standing out across the rest of their salespeople. So they can actually really see quantifiably how the performance is working. So so there's been some fantastic takeaways, and most importantly is just being able to see those really top performing salespeople, that the process actually works and delivers the outcomes that we say it does.
Love that. Awesome. Thank you so much, Andre. So many great shares in there. Thank you.
Thank you as well, Andrea. And awesome to get your perspective from the client side. It's actually really interesting for me just reflecting on the two different lenses that we have on this process, but how much commonality there is in it, and also the benefits that our clients get out of it from going through the process. So just for people watching, thank you so much for those of you that have taken the opportunity to watch this session. Please keep an eye out for the next sessions coming up. There will be a number of additional Coaches Corners recordings coming out in the near future, so watch the space, and hopefully we'll catch up again soon.